What's poppin', people? It's Dante, currently walking through the tunnels of City Hall. My man is standing tall, playing his flute all year long. I think for 2 years now, he's been honing his craft, playing his flute, and working on some paintings and drawings sometimes too. And yeah, it's always nice to hear a little bit of an amateur musician sort of just doing their thing, right? Kind of just going through life. One whistle at a time. And so yeah, it's much more fun to be an amateur, right? It's much more interesting when you're in this sort of like stage of becoming, right? Like the period of time where you're learning and growing, right, is probably the most fruitful period in my photographic journey. I'll never forget when I first started and I picked up the Ricoh GR2 and I started making photographs, and I just, you know, I barely understood how to use the camera. I just put it in P mode and I would run around and get all of these crazy photos that to this day are extremely strong and some of my best work that I made during the period of me learning and growing. And so yeah, I think there's some wisdom in that, right? To be an amateur forever seems to be a wise way forward. And so I find that by utilizing the Ricoh GR3, GR3X, I can essentially just remain an amateur forever just through the way in which I photograph, right? When you remove a viewfinder and you're not really too compositionally, you know, you're not like lining up compositions with the viewfinder or really doing much like fancy business, right? Like I'm kind of just throwing the camera around using my intuition to photograph. I think this is maybe where the more interesting work can be made. And so yeah, I think maybe the camera, while it doesn't matter, it really does matter because it influences the way that you behave on the streets. You know, for instance, using a Fujifilm camera, maybe using the Fujifilm X Pro camera, the X100 camera, I'm much more inclined to raise the camera to my eye because of the viewfinder. And what that does is, not only is it putting a delay between me and pressing the shutter, but it's also making me think too much about the leading lines, think too much about the layering, think too much about what's in front of me and how to make a perfect picture. And ultimately, I'm not interested in making perfect pictures. If anything, I'm trying to make pictures that are more spontaneous, more raw, and have a feeling of serendipity within the frame itself and how I make it. And so I think actually, when you remove the viewfinder, it really does open up this possibility of more play, more raw, sort of authentic images that you can create that become a reflection of your soul, of how you feel about life, about how you position yourself on the front lines of life and how you respond to life and how you feel about life. You know, for me, that's maybe a much more interesting way to photograph, is through your gut, through your intuition, not necessarily with the rational mind of you putting together a composition, but merely following through with your intuition, if that makes sense. And so I think that those kind of approach, like this kind of approach, will ultimately reflect in the photographs, and you'll have this raw, sort of visceral image when stripping down to high contrast black and white, when removing color from your frames and stripping down to the highest contrast possible. This is where I think magic happens. And I think actually the darker the photograph, the more intriguing they become, because there's less information within the frames. When you have a perfectly exposed, perfectly composed, perfectly lit photo, it's actually a bit too obvious. And I think we don't want to make photos that are a little bit too obvious, but actually to obscure the image through the use of the exposure evaluation. Like here I'm using the lever to lower my exposure, and by photographing the sky, photographing the strip of light and the clouds, I'm obscuring the shadow area and making it so that I'm only focusing on these highlight areas. And so yeah, I think actually when you think of the photo more of like a painting or a drawing or an instant sketch of life, and less of this like depiction of reality in the sort of tradition of photography, making a sort of documentary sort of document, right, kind of like treat it more like this way for you to express yourself in a way, right? I think that's maybe the goal of art, is to share your perspective, to express yourself. And so yeah, I'd certainly say to try it out yourself, right? To just sort of embrace the snapshot. Yeah, this, oh, I put it over there. Yeah, no, I'm, you're smoking. Let's fucking go, man. 30 years, and you're still going strong. And you still look like you're 20. Are you a painter?
Yes.
Yeah.
Some people say that I don't want to. It's all in mentality.
Yeah, I think cigarettes are worse for you.
I think so.
Yeah, cigarettes are worse for you.
My man.
But yeah, man, yo,
You don't live in Philadelphia.
no, I live in Philadelphia. I'm just the guy that's always filming and photographing. Yeah, you like my new chair? You like my shoes?
I love those.
Yo, these shoes are fire.
I got those when I go jet skiing.
Oh, word? Yeah, they're like water shoes.
Right
Yeah.
now, it's cold, but
I'll wash your back.
Bike lane.
Wee, you're in the bike lane. Yeah, I think biking is dangerous though, don't you think?
I already got stolen.
You've gotten stolen before?
I travel a lot. Traveled
Yeah.
to Virginia the first week of October.
Yeah.
And it was still warm. I wanted to go to the beach.
Right.
Beautiful.
Right.
Beautiful. I'm going down 13th. I turned down a